الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما نافعا. Okay, let's Jazmab, it's yours.
إذ الأسباب عن التأثير الحقيقي. تنبيه: إن التوحيد توحيدان. الأول توحيد عامي يقول لا شريك له، ليس هذه الكائنات لغيره، فيمكن تداخل الغفلات بل الضلالات في أفكار صاحبه. والثاني توحيد حقيقي يقول هو الله وحده له الملك وله الكون، له كل شيء، فيرى سكته على كل شيء ويقرأ خاتمه على كل شيء، فيثبته له إثباتا حضوريا لا يمكن تدخل الضلالة والأوهام في هذا التوحيد. فنحن نسمع كلمات من هذا التوحيد التي استفدناها من القرآن الحكيم. اللمعة الأولى.
Okay. Okay, so we are reading the flashes. We are continuing to read the flashes in Mathnawi al-Arabi al-Nuri. And we had an introduction, and before we move on to the main section of the treatise, Ustad Nursi is also giving us a cautioning us about an issue, or rather reminder. I translated this as caution, but it could also be translated as a reminder. And the content of this reminder will be something that we will need to keep in mind as we read the entire treatise. Sorry. So, monotheism is of two types. In التوحيد توحيدان. One second. In التوحيد توحيدان. Now the word tawhid, of course, is a noun that is made from a verb, and it implies an act. So the origin would be wahid, one, and tawhid is to make one. And since that's a clumsy translation, we translate it as monotheism, right? And Ustad Nursi here is saying us, monotheism is of two types. So we will see what those two types that he has in mind are. First, naive monotheism. This is Amiyane, and I had a footnote here. Let me see if I can read that. Yes, okay, it's up. So that could be translated as like ordinary plebeian, uneducated. If you want to go and like Marxism, like the masses and things like that. But we should not understand that as uneducated. That could be one of the translations. Because when Ustad Nursi talks about, Ibn Sina or al-Arabi, as that's in that footnote, he says something like this. Thus, it is because of these corrupted foundations and pernicious consequences of philosophy that as a result of being infatuated with its apparent glitter, being duped by that path and having entered it, geniuses like Ibn Sina and Farabi among Islam's people of wisdom have only been able to attain the degree of an ordinary. So it's not amiyane, but adi is the word here. Ordinary believer. An evidence for Islam by himself, Hujjatul Islam. Like Imam Ghazali, has not even given that degree to them. So, as we said, there are two types of monotheism, and the second type, Ustad Nursi will explain, is a more advanced, more profound type of monotheism, and he is not giving that to geniuses like Ibn Sina or Farabi. Imam Ghazali is not giving faith to them at all, but Ustad says they may be an ordinary believer. So when we think of this word, amiyane monotheism, I translate as naive monotheism, and inshallah I can talk about why that was the choice. We do not think of it as the monotheism of uneducated, ignorant, I mean ignorant in quotation marks, right? Uneducated by our modern standards of popular public education, literate and so on. So that's not what we should have in mind, right? It's something else. It is a type of monotheism that has never been challenged and therefore is intact. But we don't know if it will be able to remain intact if it is challenged. Right? So naive monotheism says there is no partner to him, and this cosmos does not belong to anyone other than him. Is this true faith? Let me ask, is this true faith? I mean, truth, is this an accurate, if I use the word true, it's not going to be confused with the second true monotheism. Is this an accurate statement of faith? What do you think?
It is accurate, it's not wrong, right?
Okay.
The top one, right? There is no partner to him, and this cosmos does not belong to anyone other than him. It is not wrong. But is it complete? That's probably...
Okay. So I would agree.
And,
this is, yes.
And also it sounds like it is shallow. I mean, everybody can say this in a way. Like any child, let's say, can say this. But if you, I mean, as an average human being, consciousness is more than consciousness of a child. So it's kind of obvious, imperial, let's say, to say God created all the worlds. I mean, this is very childish, I would say. I mean, human nature requires more elaboration on this.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It is accurate, but there could be more to be said, right? It could go further than that. And Ustad Nursi is cautioning us. This is part of the caution. Heedlessness and, in fact, misguidance can enter the thoughts of the possessor of this kind of monotheism. Now, heedlessness is becoming unaware or being caught unaware. If you are heedless and there is a danger that's coming, you don't notice the danger. If you're heedless and there are nuances that need to be caught, you can't catch those nuances. And then if these dangers, if these challenges, if these missed nuances accumulate, then this can also lead to misguidance. And misguidance is dalala. And dalala is a very bad place to be. Heedlessness, you may still, there is a possibility that you may, come back. But dalala, unless you are given hidayah, guidance from God, you are doomed. It's a bad place to be. So heedlessness and, in fact, misguidance can enter the thoughts of the possessor of this kind of monotheism. We are going to talk more about it when we read the blue-colored font from the 22nd word. So I'm not going into too much detail here.
Can I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
There's, another concept like taklidi iman. Do you think, is there a direct relationship between taklidi iman and tawhid ami, or they're different concepts? Or could we just, let's say, have different combinations, like somebody can have amiyane tawhid, but at the tahqiq level, or is it another concept, or how would you position this taklid imitation?
I would say they are very closely related, and in his later works, Ustad Nursi actually changed the terminology, and he uses taqlidi and tahqiqi, so imitative and verified more frequently. And taqlidi would be imitative, and tahqiqi would be verified in English. Taqlid is not a bad thing. And naive monotheism is not a bad thing either. These are all good, as we said, as long as they are not challenged. So in taqlid, what happens is you trust the authority of a person, a source, and because of your trust, you accept whatever that source says as true. So let's think, we are living in the 15th century in a village somewhere in Anatolia or somewhere in, I don't know, Pakistan. And there is a Sufi Sheikh master, Sufi master in the area that we have given our allegiance. And we love this man, we trust this man. We have no iota of suspicion that there can be any false statement that may come from the mouth of this man. And he says there is one God, Muhammad is messenger, slave and messenger, and it takes a place in our heart. So it settles in our heart. Now this is imitative because he said there is one God and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger, and we believed in this because he said it. Old ancient Greek philosophy, or rather oration and logic, and they would call this appeal to authority. Appeal to authority. Nowadays, when they teach logic at colleges, they teach appeal to authority as an example of a fallacy, a false pattern of thought. That's not necessarily the case.
This is also mentioned in Emirdal letter, right? This fallacy, appeal to authority. Ustad says this is not a way to go, in a way.
Yes. Because the switch that Ustad is making by writing the Risale-i-Nur and introducing his system is a switch from appeal to authority to demonstration, proving something based on information that is in correspondence with reality. Right? So the demonstration is hujjah. And he says that this needs to be the case in this age for many reasons. One, information spreads around. Now, not knowledge, but information spreads around very fast. Two, because of public education, education is popularized and everybody now learns to read and process information. And as a result, they may also think that they are knowledgeable, right? So the power of appeal to authority goes down in this age. And even if it was maintained, there is a danger of people promoting themselves as authority by using, let's say, especially like social media channels and so on and so forth, like because of the ratings, etc., right? By using certain methods of propaganda, although they are not knowledgeable. So it becomes incumbent upon each and every person, human being with intellect, to evaluate the sources and reach a demonstrative knowledge, right? So this is the major shift Ustad Nursi is making with his method. And when he sends his treatises to his students early on, this would be in Barlahi Kasa, right? He says, read it, let me know what you think, but read it with a critical eye, understand what it says. If you accept it, send back to me what you understood. If you don't accept it, send back to me with binnal nefrin, like with your hate, right? So don't take it as true because it is coming from me. The evidence is provided in the text. Evaluate the text, evaluate the evidence, and then accept it or not. But I'm sure that the evidence I'm providing here is acceptable. It is demonstrative, because I did the struggle with my own lower soul first. It was my Satan and my lower soul that objected to it first, and I had to sit down with them and discuss the matter and come to the conclusion that this is accurately presented, right? As for verified tahqiqi, which in the Mathnawi he uses true hakiki, and then he moves to tahqiqi. That's also an established concept in the traditions. Like taqlid is an established concept in the tradition. Tahqiq is also an established concept in the tradition. From around the 12th century or so on, the Kalam tradition moves to become a like tahqiqi. What that means is that before scholars in the Kalam tradition would look at the Quran, the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, and come up with lists of what is true belief, aqidah, right? Like aqidah comes from the source like knot. What needs to be put a knot in our heart so that it's not going to go away anyway, in any before any challenges, right? So Kalam was more like aqidah before. But from around the 12th century on, especially with Imam Razi, but it doesn't start with him, they move on to verify the knowledge that has been accumulated in the texts of Aqidah. So the text of Aqidah says, La ilaha illallah, there is one God, Allahu Wahid, right? So the mutakallim, the dialectical theologian from like 11th, 12th century on, takes this statement and says, okay, is this true? How do I know? How can I know? How can I verify the truth of this without appeal to authorities? So it is in the tradition. However, the problem that is in the tradition is that the methods of verification were borrowed from mostly from Greek logic, philosophy, and especially logic, and were very convoluted and very difficult to understand, difficult to grasp for not even an uneducated person, but someone who is not really smart and who like has an aptitude for this kind of detailed study, right? So like some people are very good in engineering, some people are not. I'm not good in engineering. I'm not good with math, right? I am good with more qualitative studies, right? And so I'm good with verbal things, right? And some people are good with painting, and some people are. So that method of verification, if you want to take the path of verification in that tradition, is not open to everybody at all times and requires detailed study and not easily applicable as we move on in our daily lives. So what Ustad Nursi is trying to do here is to develop a method that everybody can take and apply in their lives without having to be engineers or I don't know, like masters of oratory skills or masters of logic and whatever. But that is something to come later on in the Risale-e-Nur. At this stage, he is distinguishing between naive monotheism and true monotheism. And then the terminology will become later on taqlidi, imitative, and tahqiqi, verified monotheism. Does anybody want to add something to that?
So it's kind of gives us opportunity to ponder, to reflect deeper. I mean, having this 4 distinct words instead of having, let's say, 2 words.
True. I mean, we could actually, or I could add something to the naive monotheism part. I don't know if anybody here read Charles Taylor, A Secular Age. It's a thick book, not an easy read, and I mean I don't recommend reading. It's okay, but he's a famous philosopher, like modern contemporary philosopher, and he talks about what secularity means in the European or North Atlantic context, but then his description can be expanded to the rest of the world because the rest of the world borrowed the concept of secularity. I'm not talking about secularism, laicism. I'm not talking about separating church and state. He brings a definition of his own to the concept. There he uses the word naive belief or naive faith or something like that. And what he means by that is before Enlightenment philosophy and secularism becoming an acceptable way of thinking for the average person, not believing was not an option for people. It just was not in the repertoire of ideas before people. People believed in God. People believed in, I don't know, like the devil. People believed in spirits. People believed in this. People believed in that, but they believed in something, right? Not everybody had the true faith. Like this is being taught in the Christian context because that's what he's saying he's investigating. People could believe in, Christianity as taught by a particular denomination. People could believe in the falsehood of that, but almost nobody dared say that there is not a higher reality, right? So with Enlightenment, scientific revolution, the advent of positivism, like no need to go into too much detail about Hume's fork, etc. Not believing at all became an option, and this advanced so much so, especially in the 19th century with the triumph of science, that among educated circles, believing became a difficult option. And that continues to be the case in some circles, like in the academia, especially if you are in humanities. It might be different in sciences, but especially in you are in humanities, you almost have to have a double life if you are a believer. You have to talk a secular language, right? If you don't talk the secular language, people reject your speech, reject your conversation from the get-go because you are not deploying the right kind of language, right? So naive monotheism, Taylor understands this as faith in a context where not believing is not an option. So that is not what Ustad Nursi is saying exactly here, but it helps us grasp what Ustad Nursi is talking about, because in Amiyane Tawhid, Amiyane monotheism, you are born in a society and you are taught that, again, taqlid goes to the same place, right? You are taught that there's one God and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger. If anybody says anything that goes against this or against any of the articles of faith, they are pervert people, they are evil people, just don't listen to them, run away from them, have fear, right? Be afraid of them. You grow up in that context and this becomes the normal thing to do, and you keep going on. And as long as it is not challenged, which was again the case for most of history, it's not a big problem. You are a believer, and how do we know that this should not be a problem? Somewhere Ustad Nursi talks about millions of awliya and billions of asfiya. I don't know if anybody noticed this. Awliya is saints, right? Asfiya is purified ones. But who are they? Like, who are the purified ones? How can there be billions of asfiya among the Muslims, right? So asfiya are, according to our understanding and according to Ustad Nursi's presentation, are people who follow the path of the companions, who are candidates of the greater level of sainthood. Now, this doesn't mean that the saints are not asfiya. The saints would be a subcategory of asfiya. right? But Asfiya is a very broad category, and inshallah, they're all, in our understanding, they're all destined for the garden. Of course, God knows who is going to go there, but we have good opinion of people that we call Asfiya. So billions of Asfiya. That means that, although many people throughout history had Amiyana Tawheed, naive monotheism, right? That was okay. However, the problem is we are not living there. This is a new age. This is a new context, right? And we cannot risk heedlessness, which may then lead to misguidance in this age. We need to be alert, right? Shall I continue?
One question comes to mind regarding this naive or imitative or superficial iman. There is a hadith Ustad is mentioning in Kastamonu letters. Alaykum bidin al-ajais. That is, in Akhir Zaman, at the end of the time, follow the sincere religion and strong beliefs of elderly women. So this, I think, this iman of elderly woman, alaykum bidin al-ajais, is it in this first category? But Rasulullah, he says, in Akhir Zaman, follow the sincere religion and strong beliefs of elderly women. So sometimes maybe this sort of iman may be stronger than the other one. Can we say this, or?
Now, is it in the first category or second category? I'm a bit I need to think about it. It doesn't automatically form in my mind.
This is why I asked. Maybe these four terminologies can help us. I would say this lady's imam wouldn't be most likely tahqiqi, but it would be a true iman. So I think at this point, maybe these four terminologies would help us. I wouldn't put this iman to the naive one, the first one, but also I wouldn't say that this is a tahqiqi iman as well.
Yes. So it's a strong iman, but not verified.
It's a pure, in a way, true iman, but it's not tahqiqi.
I think one old lady comes to Saadat Taftazani. He is a great scholar of Kalam, and he says, "Ya Imam, you are. I heard that you are proving Allah with thousands of proofs. You have thousands of suspicions. Then you need thousands of proofs." She is telling Saadat Taftazani, in one respect. So she doesn't need any proof because she has a strong iman in her heart, for example. But of course, at this time, that strong iman, maybe found, maybe very little.
Yeah, well, that story is narrated in many forms. The one that's like most famous, actually, about Imam Razi. He was like passing by a village or something, and everybody was, "Oh, Imam Razi is passing, Imam Razi is passing." And then an old woman there says, like, "Who is this Imam Razi? Why is everybody talking about him?" And they say, "Don't you know he has like 70 proofs for God's existence?" And she says, "Look, if he did not have 70 doubts, he wouldn't need 70 proofs." And Imam Razi is said to have like kind of like changed course later in his life, because he is a genius of logic and the Kalam tradition, theological tradition, to a more like Sufi-like path. And before dying, he is said to have said, "Alayka bidin al-ajais." So whether this is hadith or not, we don't know. It is mentioned in Imam Ghazali's Ihya, and Imam Razi is after Imam Ghazali. Therefore, it has to have a precedent before Razi. But the idea is the we understand the religion of the Ajais, the old woman, as this faith that is pure and has no doubt, like shak, right? Has no doubt that is that has contaminated that faith, right? But again, the problem is, can it be maintained in a context where challenges are being bombarded, right? So take that old woman, put her in an elementary school today, an average elementary school, teach her English, writing, reading, etc., and make her go through, process her through K through 12 in America, and it will make her go to college and attend, I'm not like that, study biology, and have her graduate from the biology department of an average university in America. Is she still going to be able to maintain that purity, that uncorrupted, unspoiled strength of her faith? That is the question we are having here, right?
Yeah.
So whether it is naive, whether it is imitative or not, we are not saying it is bad. It is good. The problem is it is not possible. It is not possible anymore.
I guess we dwelled on this a bit, maybe, but is it also like, right, Ustad talks about the tradition of madrasa, and he says, there are like 15 years of education is needed to get to a certain point, but we don't really have the time to get to that point at this point in time. And 3 months, something that is needed, we need pretty much shortcuts or the summaries and some sort of a compact form of that knowledge to be transferred. That is probably one side. The other thought that came to my mind is also, I guess, in Isharat al-Ijaz, right, that mentions the worship also supplementing Iman and having them feedback to each other. So I think like in one sense, if one is able to, and I guess that is the most, salient feature of old lady in a Muslim setting, is that they worship, and mashallah, to a level that, it also may be increasing and supplementing their iman. But of course, as you said, that is not really the average that we have in the current times, like some sort of a level of worship that removes all the doubts. It takes much effort, looks like, given the context of what we have.
Yeah. I mean, that's another aspect. Of course, one has faith, but faith needs protection, and when it is not protected, it can leave, right? It increases, it decreases, and it needs protection. And worship, acts of worship, are the protector of faith. So let me move on to read this. And second, true monotheism, so tawhid al-haqiqi, right? Not tahqiqi, but haqiqi here. True monotheism says he is the one God. Now, one important thing to notice here, and it was not in a translation that I had sent before, I myself noticed this recently, and as a result of somebody who was reading this in Arabic, noticing and then telling me, it starts with he, right? The one starts with like there's no partner. The second one starts with he is the one God. His is the dominion. His is the creation. His is everything. Now, we may not be able to understand the difference straight away from the phrasing of the sentences, but the example that will come before in the 22nd word makes it very clear, right? One difference based on the sentences themselves is that, again, we start with he, right? We start with God, and we don't only look at the cosmos, and we don't say, you know, nobody other than him can be this, but we say, we don't need to go through everything one by one. He is the one. His is the dominion, and his is the creation, and his is everything. So it's a mental path that goes directly to him, rather than eliminating everything else and finding him at the end. Right? This is again one of the methods that Ustad Nursi wants to emphasize in his work, and he says this is the Quranic method that has been lost in the theological tradition to some extent. Did somebody want to say something? I missed. Okay. The possessor of this kind of monotheism sees God's stamp on each thing. So this is the important part for us, and that we will want to keep in mind. The possessor of this kind of monotheism sees God's stamp on each thing. Remember we said, instead of eliminating everything and finding him at the end, we find him on everything, in everything, everywhere, wherever we turn, as the verse says. The possessor of this kind of monotheism sees God's stamp on each thing, reads his seal on each thing, and has proofs for it that are ever present. So it's ever present, right? So you don't have to sit down and develop proofs. The proof is in what you see, right there. You don't need to go anywhere, right there. Misguidance and fanciful imagination cannot interfere in this monotheism. So misguidance and fanciful imagination. Fanciful imagination is a difficult translation. The word, of course, here is awham, right? Awham, wahm. This is a faculty of the human mind. And an easy way to understand it is to compare it with assumption. If a thought comes to your mind and you think of it as likely and you give it more than 50% chance, you assume it. If the chance is 5%, 10%, or if you don't attribute any chance, it's just a thought that comes to mind for concentration, then it's a wahm. Okay. Oops, sorry. So this part in the 22nd word, which of course Ustad Nursi wrote 10 to 15 years, I guess. I didn't look up actually when the 22nd word was written, but about 10 years later, let's say, that should be right. It clarifies the point here much better, I would say. And therefore I want to read it too. I have the Turkish here. I will read the Turkish first and then inshallah we'll read the English together. Tevhid iki kısımdır. Mesela nasıl ki bir çarşıya ve bir şehre büyük bir zatın mütenevvi malları gelse, iki çeşitli onun malı olduğu bilinir. Biri icmali amiyanedir ki bu kadar azim mal ondan başka kimsenin haddi değil ki sahip olabilsin. Fakat böyle ami bir adamın nezaretinde çok hırsızlık olabilir. Parçalarına çok adamlar sahip çıkabilir. İkinci çeşit odur ki her denk üzerinde yazıyı okur, her bir top üstünde turrayı tanır, her bir ilan üstünde mührünü bilir bir surette her şey o zatındır der. İşte şu halde her bir şey o zatı manen gösterir. So monotheism is of two types. In the way that when the miscellaneous merchandise of a great person comes to a big marketplace or city, it is known in two ways that this is his merchandise. Of course, Ustad Nursi is giving us this allegorical story that is his style, and it usually helps us understand things much better. So there is merchandise that came to a city. It's a big amount of merchandise, and there are two ways to know that this is a certain person's. Right? One is overall and naive. No one has the circumstances to possess such a tremendous amount of merchandise other than him. We look around. Yes, there are other merchants. So that's the problem. There are other merchants. Yes, there are other merchants, but no one is wealthy enough to possess all of this. There's only one merchant who can have all of this merchandise. But much theft can occur under the supervision of such a naive person. Many people can claim the pieces of that merchandise, right? I think we talked about this before it came, that there was an occasion and we talked about it. Imagine a thief, there's a guard guarding that merchandise, and the thief comes and says, I agree, nobody in this city other than that big merchant can own all of this, but this little plate here, you see this plate, it seems to have mixed in. It is mine, this plate is mine. Yes, everything else is his, this plate is mine. Is this acceptable for us? No. As long as as soon as you attribute one thing, anything in the creation to other than God, that's shirk. That's ascribing partners to God, and you lose your faith, right? Faith is not, faith is not something that you can maintain 99% and not maintain like 1%. Faith has to be 100%. Much theft can occur under the supervision of such a naive person. You go to the mosque, pray in a state of contemplation and before your Lord. You come out, you cough, and then you say, oh, I have a sore throat. You go to the pharmacy, take medicine, put it in, and expect healing from the medicine. May God protect it. If you don't make the connection and understand that healing is from God, and you expect healing from the medicine, that's a hidden shirk, a hidden polytheism, hidden ascription of partners to God. So we don't want theft. We want to see God's stamp wherever we look on the medicine. If you are eating food and assuming that the food is going to satiate you, no, on the food, you want to see it everywhere. Many people can claim the pieces of that merchandise. The second type says, everything belongs to that person. So everything, each thing, each and everything belongs to that person. As if reading the label on each bale, recognizing the monogram on each roll, and knowing the cachet on each proclamation. In that case, each thing points to that person metaphysically. So the thief came and said, well, this plate seems to have mixed in, and you take the plate and turn it over and say, no, you're wrong. Here is his stamp. This is his stamp. Therefore, this belongs to the merchant. You cannot deceive me. You cannot cheat me. In the same way, monotheism is of two types. Biri tevhid-i ami ve zahiridir ki Cenab-ı Hak birdir, şeriki naziri yoktur, bu kainat onundur. One is naive and superficial. So, Ustad Nursi added an explanatory qualifier to amiyane, naive, that was used before. It is superficial monotheism. It doesn't go too deep. It does not bring demonstrations. Right? God is the sublime real. God, the sublime real, is one. He has no partner or likeness. This cosmos is his. The H there should be capital. Again, this is true. This is faith. But it remains at a superficial level. And it can be challenged. The thief may come and say, well, yes, he is one. He has no partner or likeness. This cosmos is his. But within that cosmos, the medicine, is healing you, right? Or give God's right to God and Caesar's right to Caesar. All of these are hidden polytheisms. İkincisi tevhid-i hakikidir ki her şey üstünde sikke-i kudretini ve hatem-i rububiyetini ve nakş-ı kalemini görmekle doğrudan doğruya her şeyden onun nuruna karşı bir pencere açıp onun birliğine ve her şey onun desti kudretinden çıktığına ve uluhiyetinde ve rububiyetinde ve mülkünde hiçbir vecih ile hiçbir şeriki ve mu'ini olmadığına şuhuda yakın bir yakîn ile tasdik edip iman getirmektir ve bir nevi huzuru daimi elde etmektir. Biz dahi şu sözde o halis ve âli tevhid-i hakiki gösterecek şuaları zikredeceğiz. The second is verified monotheism. Here is that using tahkiki, right? Verified monotheism. And it is to open a window. So what is verified monotheism? What is tahkik? It is to open a window from everything directly to his light by seeing his cachet of power, his seal of lordship, and the inscription of his pen on each and everything. So you turn and look at the firmament and see the stars, and immediately you see his seal. You see his proofs when you look at the stars. You take a cup of water and drink it. Immediately you see, you taste, you feel him as the provider, as the creator, as the merciful, and so on and so forth. You see his manifestation in the water, you see his manifestation on the firmament, you see his manifestation on your fingertips, everywhere. It is, again, continuing the definition of verified monotheism. It is to affirm and have faith with a certainty that comes close to witnessing in his oneness, with a certainty that comes close to witnessing in his oneness, in that everything issues from his hand of power, in his divinity, uluhiyya, and lordship, rububiyyah, and in that he does not have any partners or assistants in any way in his dominion, and to attain a kind of continuous sense of presence before him. So the kind of faith that we want to attain, right, is one that will give us a continuous sense of presence before him. And what is that? What does that define? What does that define in the tradition? To have a kind of continuous sense of presence before him, before God.
Like huzur.
Okay, huzur, good. And any other suggestions?
Basically applying the practice of Prophet ﷺ.
Can you repeat that? I didn't understand.
So living according to the practice of Prophet ﷺ.
Yes. Okay. So living according to, yes, that living according to the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to Sunnah, reminds us. Like, I'm drinking water. As soon as you are drinking water, if you remember the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he drank, that reminds you of the Prophet, and the Prophet reminds you of the one who sent him as a messenger, God, and that reminds you of God. So that's one of the in strategies that will lead us to that sense of presence before him, right? I'm not sure if I will get the what I have in mind. I mean, these are all true. There is not one true answer, but what I'm trying to get to is, if you remember the hadith of Gabriel, right? Jibril comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asks what is faith, and asks what is Islam, what is Iman, what is Islam, and then he asks what is Ihsan, right? What is Ihsan in that hadith? Anybody remember?
Yeah, just feeling that you're in front of Allah all the time.
Yes, to worship as if you are seeing God. If God is, even if you are not seeing God, you know that God is seeing you. So what is knowing that somebody is seeing you is that sense of presence, right, before him. So we want to attain a level of faith, in faith that we feel his presence every time, everywhere, wherever we turn, and that is the attainment of ihsan, right? So that's the ultimate degree, ultimate level that we want to get to, inshallah. And here in Lamad, in the flashes, in this treatise, and elsewhere, Ustad Nursi gives us teaches us ways of looking at the creation to see the signs of the creator. We are pretty close to the end of time, but I just want to maybe go through this first flash in the flashes. So Jazma, if you can play that, I just want to read it.
You didn't share, Abi.
I didn't
You
share
mean
one.
the flashes from the 22nd word?
No. We are reading Lema'at now, the first one. The first.
Did you share the Lama'at? No.
Jazma, we are reading Lema'at.
What do you mean, Jazma?
our PDF ends with.
Oh,
yes.
I see. Okay, so but I'm sharing on the screen.
The screen share is there. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, you are sharing. Then
Can you play it? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, 1 minute. For that reason, I should. I didn't prepare that part in Arabic. Yeah.
Okay.
As I didn't get the Arabic part, yes.
I see. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Inshallah, we can
get to that.
inshallah, next week we can play it. Oh, hold on. I didn't do it. My cell phone started playing something. Anyway, I'm just going to read the English, then inshallah next week when we go over it in more detail, we do the Arabic too. And now we will have you listen to some of the flashes of monotheism that we have benefited from the wisdomful Quran. So we start saying, this is all from the Quran. Okay. First flash. Verily the artful maker, Sani', inna Sani'a, inna Sani'a jalla jalaluhu ala kulli masnu'in min masnu'atihi sikkatan khassatan biman huwa khaliqan kulla shay'in. Verily the artful maker, exalted as his majesty, jalla jalaluhu, has on each one of his artifacts a private cachet, indicating that he is the creator of everything. On each one of his creatures a private seal, indicating that he is the artful maker of everything. And on each scroll among the inscribed letters of his power, an illustrious, inimitable royal monogram that belongs to the Sultan of pre-eternity and post-eternity personally. For instance, so this is what I wanted to get to, so that what we are doing has a like more concrete aspect to it. We understand what we are talking about when he says seals and stamps. So what is that seal? What is that stamp? I'm looking at the tree. What is the stamp that I'm supposed to see? There are many stamps, thousands of stamps. One of them, for instance, among his countless stamps, look at this stamp that is placed on life. Take a look at life. Life is something that is everywhere around us. So it's everywhere in the creation. It is easier to see it on Earth, certainly, right? But according to Ustad Nursi's understanding, and there is life everywhere in the creation. But limit yourself to the world. Look around in the world, on the face of the earth. Among his countless stamps, look at this stamp that is placed on life. Take a look at life. How one thing turns into everything with it, and likewise everything becomes one thing. Yes, the water that is drunk, with God's permission, turns into countless types of organs and bodily equipment that living beings have. Like 60 to 70% of human body is water. About 80% of the body of fish is water. Right? So you drink water, it becomes your hands, it becomes your eyes, it becomes like whatever. Likewise, with God's permission, all the various genera of food, types of food, become a specific body, a peculiar skin, or a simple organ. You eat bread, and the carbon in that bread, when it goes to your skin, it becomes like a skin cell, it becomes something. And when it goes to your stomach and becomes a stomach cell, it becomes something else. And it goes to the eye, it becomes, but it's all carbon. The same carbon that you got from the bread is becoming many different things. The cow is eating grass and nothing else, eating just grass, grass, grass. Or nowadays, the cows are eating corn, corn, corn. They're eating corn. The corn is becoming eye, corn is becoming stomach, corn is becoming like toenail, hoof rather, for the cow. Likewise, with God's permission, all the various genera of food become a specific body, a peculiar skin, or a simple organ. And there, everything becomes one thing with God's command. In that case, Whoever has intellect and conscious heart understands that bringing about everything from one thing and one thing from everything is a private stamp of the artful maker and creator of everything, exalted his majesty. Because if everything can turn into one thing and one thing can turn into everything, only somebody who can control everything can do this, right? So right there, in one of the aspects of one of the consequences of life, right? We didn't have to go around. We didn't have to go to like do a circular argument or what they call infinite regress. This caused that, that caused that, that caused that, that caused that. Like at some point, there has to be something that is not caused by anything. That's infinite regress, right? We don't need to. We are not doing that. We are looking at one thing, life, and in it, we are noticing that wow, I mean, this cannot be done by anybody but him. I mean, anybody but the one who owns everything. Because whoever is doing this, right, is in charge of everything. It is not possible to do this without being in charge of everything. It's happening so smoothly, so easily, and so frequently, and everywhere, and without causing any trouble, without causing any complication. That means that whoever is in charge is able to control everything all at once. Right? So this is one example, and we will have many more of them. I don't want to take more time. Inshallah, we can go back and read this again and start from there and move on to the other flashes. If anybody wants to add to this, please welcome to do.
It comes to my mind, Abi, the ayah in the Surah Al-Luqman. The ayah number is 25. The study is mentioning in the La Siyama, La Siyamas, thus part in the words also mentioned this ayah. وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهُ. So this ayah, Allah says, if you ask them who created the heavens and earth, they would surely say Allah. So here, this question is asked to whom? To the non-believers.
Mushrikeen, polytheists.
Yeah, those who are associating partners to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is, so can we consider this as the first category, or?
No.
In Amirdal letters, Ustad is mentioning not denying doesn't mean that you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in that category maybe.
But I wouldn't go that far to say that like those who have naive monotheism are polytheists, because those polytheists are or were the verse is addressed to, or the verse is referring to, right? They were polytheists. They were saying that God created the heavens, but when I'm going to a battle with the other tribe, I'm going to ask for assistance from this idol, right? So the one who has naive monotheism has monotheism.
Yeah. Okay,
right. But the risk is if it is not escalated to the level of true monotheism, and when it is challenged either by the kinds of challenges that we are facing now, or the kinds of challenges that people faced in history, because of the passage of time, forgetting the essence of the matter and heedlessness sinking in. Right? It's because those polytheists at some point were monotheists. They are descendants of Ismail alayhi salam. Ishmael alayhi salam. They are descendants of Abraham alayhi salam. The Arabs are the descendants of Ismail alayhi salam. And their father was a prophet. They believed in God. They were monotheists. But over time, they lost They lost contact with that. And they now are, I mean, at the time that this verse is being revealed, now they are saying, you know, if you ask who created the heavens and the earth, they say God, okay? But, you know, his function is limited to creating them. And now there are other things that are going on here. He's not, you know, involved in the details of what we are doing here, right? So they lost the essence of the matter. And if you don't escalate your faith to that through monotheism, that can also happen. Like the challenge was time. The challenge was not science and knowledge and going through K through 12, but the challenge was time and heedlessness and forgetfulness. And again, that's also possible. But I wouldn't say, and I wouldn't say naive monotheism but naive monotheism is monotheism. Right? But
yes,
there is the risk. There's always the risk.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yes, thank you, Abi, for all Abis.
All Abis. Okay. Shall we end then, inshallah?
You made dua, Abi?
Okay. Yeah, unless anybody wants to add something, I'll do that. Okay. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم آخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة